There are no fire alarms planned, so in the event of a fire, please make your way out of the room and follow a member of staff to the evacuation point on Southern Green by the Plitz tree. I don't know if you've got people in the customer service centre. Please follow security staff to the evacuation point. Like our previous meeting, we now have 4 groups represented on the council, and I will reiterate how I intend to proceed. After officers have introduced the report, I will invite questions and comments from executive members. After the executive members have spoken, I will invite group leaders, then any other members who have indicated a wish to speak. I will call them forward to the table in order for those who have indicated to speak. I wish to remind group leaders that questions may be asked, but their contributions are clear as to whether their contribution carries the support of their group would be interesting to the executive to know. Support or not support for a recommendation. This will assist the executive in our decision-making process. For any questions that cannot be answered this evening, a written answer will be given. Should the question be relevant to the decision being made, then I may ask the portfolio owner or the officer to respond. We will then confirm the recommendation from the report and then move to the report. Please note any items which have already been considered and debated by other committees. I ask members not to repeat the same questions which have already been answered at those committees, or if they're waiting for a reply outside of this committee. So just on that point, to remind us, we all attended a very informative customer-focused scrutiny committee last night, 4 hours discussion. All the executive was there. We listened attentively. We've made a number of notes, and a number of contributions will come from the executive. So it's their turn this evening. And to opposition leaders, when I call you forward, if you can please bear that in mind. Please do not repeat contributions or questions that you raised last night and had answers to, because they have been dealt with. And I would like us to deal with the recommendations that are before us this evening. So just as to say where we're going to process, and the first item is apologies for absence, and I think we've got a full house. Declarations of interest. If anybody has any pecuniary interest in accordance with the legislation, please let us know. There are no part 2 items where the press or the public needs to be excluded. Matters referred by scrutiny. Well, as I said earlier, we had 2 recommendations from scrutiny, and they will be dealt with. Can I just say those recommendations were: the executive discussed the possibility of community ownership with the Northbrook Trust and interested parties, including community groups, and that the VAT reclaim be investigated to see how a proportion might be reinvested in the future of Northbrook Pool. Those two recommendations from the scrutiny will be addressed as the meeting goes forward. So please bear that in mind. So the next item is indeed the closure of Northbrook swimming pool, and the director Ian Collinson will now make a presentation. I will then invite members of the executive to ask any questions on that presentation, Ian. After we've asked those questions, we will then go into the discussion and debate onto the recommendations. So Ian, your presentation, please. And I think for members of the audience at the back, you should be able to also see it on the screen. Do you need a microphone? Right. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Executive Committee. I'm going to make a short presentation, really just to summarise what's contained in the report and the detailed appendices that you have with you. Really, the report's in three parts, and what it will do is explain some of the information or the information that's really important to the recommendations that we have for you this evening. Down. So these are the four recommendations that officers have drafted. I won't read them out verbatim, but clearly the first one relates to the Exeter agreeing to close the pool based on the information that we'll be going through for you this evening. The second recommendation follows from that to give delegated authority to myself to undertake the closure of the facility, and we will explain some of what that's involved later on. The third recommendation is that support is provided to existing members and users of the pool, local schools, in transitioning to alternative leisure facilities. And then the fourth recommendation is that should there be any increase in costs relating to that, that's reported back to the executive and the council in due course. So I'd like to start with a brief chronology, just to bring us up to speed with where we are this evening. In 2020, the council brought back the leisure services back in-house. Of course, that did include Northbrook Pool. Between July 22 and January 24, the service carried out 13 separate marketing campaigns. They were to boost attendance and usage of the pool. That was also to tackle the shortfall in revenue. Unfortunately, usage and revenue figures haven't really changed or improved during that period or subsequently. In December, between December and January 24-25, the council undertook a resident survey in relation to the budget setting. It's quite an important contextual point, which I'll focus on in a moment. Then, obviously, on the 25th of February 25, the council then set a balanced budget. So that kind of takes you into the context for what we're going to discuss this evening. What's really important, I think, for the executive to understand is that there's some very clear information on which officers have based recommendations for you tonight, and that's how the report is structured. So the first set of information is in relation to accurate financial data on usage and running costs. And as I've said already, despite those targeted efforts to tackle usage and running, the pool still operates and has done since the council took it back into the service at a substantial loss. So there's been, over time, a subsidy to keep the pool open of £686,130 and 99p to be absolutely accurate. There's also the second bit of information that we have is in relation to the estimates that we've done for capital investment. Should the pool continue to be run as a facility, we've estimated that in the order of £2.1 million would need to be invested in this facility just to bring it up to modern standards of safety, ensure that people have access if they're disabled, and also to make the building more energy efficient. The third set of information is in relation to the really important public consultation. So following the budget setting, no decision was made at that point to close the pool. We instigated a full open public consultation. That lasted 6 weeks, and it involved surveys, focus groups for some of the pool users, follow-up telephone conversations. So that was for people who weren't able or chose not to be part of the focus groups or take part in the online survey. That consultation generated really important qualitative information. So what I mean by that is, it's the stories of people who experience and use the pool. That's all being captured. And that's really important because that's how we can understand the impact of the potential closure on real people's lives. So all that information is gathered together for you in a detailed appendix. Should have said as well the financial and capital investment information that's contained and set out in various reports that are contained within Appendix 1. The final set of data, very critical to a process like this when a council is proposing to change a service. It's a legal requirement to undertake an equality and impact assessment. What that does is provide comprehensive information and an understanding of the potential impact of the closure, in this case of the pool, for users, particularly those users with protected characteristics. It also sets out suggestions for how the council might want to mitigate those impacts should it decide to close the pool. So a little bit of contextual information before we get into the meat of that data. So before the council set its budget, it did undertake a full survey of residents across the city to understand some of their priorities if in terms of the budget. So one question that was asked of residents was to state the extent to which they agreed or disagreed with a series of statements on the service areas the council was considering investing or disinvesting. I don't expect you to read the graph there, but in response to the question, how could the council reduce costs? All 6 options, not surprisingly, saw high levels of disagreement than agreement. However, agreement was highest for ending grant funding to independent arts and culture organisations, 32%, closely followed, so in second place, by reducing the subsidy on council-run leisure services. So that's the view of residents right across the city of Exeter. So to look deeper into that consultation and that survey, further analysis showed that there was a higher agreement on reducing the subsidy of the 6 council-run leisure facilities amongst people aged over 65, females, non-white ethnic groups, and Exeter City Council housing tenants. Just to balance that, there was a higher disagreement from younger people, aged 24 to 44, males, those from a white ethnic background, and those who did not have a disability or long-term condition, and those living in areas of lower deprivation. So you can see there was a balance there in terms of people who were favouring reductions in our leisure services compared to people who would prefer to see those maintained. So that took us then to the 25th of February, when the council set a balanced budget. At that meeting, you'll recall, members were advised that the council, in order to set that legally balanced budget, it needed to make a saving of 3.5 million. And out of that 3.5 million, 586,000 needs to come from leisure services. So over 500,000 from one service. So the response to that from officers has been to review the centres that it runs. And one of the potential savings which was identified was Northbrook swimming pool. So staff at the time were informed of that, but it was also made clear that there would be no closure, no decision would be taken at that moment until there was a full public consultation and an impact assessment. So that takes us to the financial case. So the first part of that raft of information that's before you this evening. I think the figures speak for themselves, but I would point you to the figures in bold. So the total subsidy, I'll repeat it, £686,130.99. That's over the period since the council took back the swimming pool and leisure services. That's because the operating costs of running the pool, including staff, maintenance, energy, bills, far outweigh the amount of income that was generated through people coming through the door and using the pool. A vast difference between revenue and cost. In addition to that, should the council decide to continue investing in the building, by the way, is not owned by the City Council, it's owned by the Northbrook Community Trust and is leased to the council on a 70-year lease. Should it decide to invest in the building, we've estimated another 2.1 million would be required for those three areas. Now, they're not areas that are discretionary, if you like. They're not areas that we would just like to have. They're absolutely essential for a building of this nature, just to bring them up to industry standards, to make them safe, to make them welcoming, but also in terms of the Disability Discrimination Act. I've visited the pool myself. It is not accessible for people with a disability. The changing rooms for males are on the entrance. To get to the pool, you've got to go down some incredibly steep staircases, then access the pool. If you've got a disability, you can't use that pool if you're a male person. So it's not the standard of provision that we would really want to provide in its current form without that investment. The other cost, the council has a huge ambition to be net zero across its services and across its facilities. So the investment required there to reduce carbon emissions, that's been quoted there as well as 850,000. So adding those three numbers together is how you get to the 2.1 million. So there's detailed work that sits behind that. They are estimates though, so it's not been possible to get full quotes for all of those costs because of the condition of the building. Before we could even contemplate procuring consultants to go out and do detailed assessments, particularly of the building standards, we would need to have done some major improvements to begin with. I think the other thing to point out about those numbers, particularly the capital investment, is that 2.1 million would not be spent in 1 year. It would need to be spent over a series of years. Now, the council hasn't budgeted for that amount. So that's an ongoing burden on the council's budget going forward for years to come in order to achieve that level of expenditure. There is no budget at the moment within the council's current financial plan to achieve those investments. So that's the finances. We're now into the public consultation. So as I've said, 6-week public consultation was opened soon after the budget setting, so in March, running through into April. Full details of that, how it was undertaken, the methodology, how we captured the information, how we engaged with people is set out for you in a detailed report. That's in Appendix 2. But just to summarise that really quickly, so 322 respondents completed the survey. That was an online survey. And there were 4 focus groups who were attended by another 35 people. So those 35 people also took part in the survey, but we offered that additional opportunity to sit down in small groups with officers and talk through those experiences, those life-changing experiences that we wanted to hear about, so we could understand how we could accommodate that should the facility close, and should we try and encourage people into the other facilities. A lot of time and a lot of effort went into designing that consultation. Officers put the time and effort and commitment to hearing from people directly, giving them a voice so that we can understand the effect that this could have on their lives. There was some other work done as well. So not everybody wanted to attend those focus groups, and not everybody felt able to fill in an online form. So we offered telephone conversations. So there were 30 individual conversations held with people, which basically went through the survey. So we got the same level of response, but it was just done in a way that was comfortable for people who weren't able to join online or attend those focus groups. So we did gain a lot of rich qualitative data from that work, and it is very clear to us, and it will be clear to you this evening, that the pool closes. If the pool closes, it will have those real life impacts on people and many of the users. In particular, we found that older people, school children, carers, the elderly, and lower income families are likely to be the most impacted. So that work then leads into the final stage of information gatherings to enable you to make a balanced decision this evening. This is the Equalities Impact Assessment. So the councils are undertaking a thorough and comprehensive EQIA. And again, that's attached in full at Appendix C. So members should have due regard to both consultation results and crucially that impact assessment before you make your decision this evening. But that assessment highlights the proposed closure of the pool does have negative impacts on people with protected characteristics, in particular disability, sex, and age. That's how those EQIAs are measured. What we also have then done is begin to assess and highlight what impacts those measures could have, this measure could have on those people, but also we can then use that to inform some of the mitigation measures. The assessment itself, because it was comprehensive, it also picked up some other impacts on people who are not recognised with protected characteristics, but nevertheless are still relevant to this conversation. Those people with mental health conditions and those with neurodivergence. That's something that's really important because some of the life stories that we've heard from people do directly relate to that. And the worries about going to different facilities that don't provide the same type of experience that perhaps they're experiencing in Northbrook. So we've been able to gather that information and properly understand the impacts that this is having. And that's given us a really good basis, should the decision be made tonight to close the pool, to think about the next steps. Think about what actions a leisure service and a city council that cares about its people want to make going forward. So these are some of the things that we'll need to consider should you make a decision this evening to close the pool. So the first thing we'd need to do, and we haven't done this work yet, obviously, because you haven't made your decision, is to create and design what I would call a closure plan. So in some respects, that's a technical process. We think it would take at least 12 weeks to do that. Now that's really important as well, because that means that if you chose to close the pool this evening, we won't turn off the lights tomorrow and empty the pool. It will take a while for that to happen. So that gives us time to think about how we can start to work with all of those groups of people who were impacted to start to help them transition to, say, St Sidwell's Point, which is an absolutely fantastic facility, or Riverside, or any of our other leisure facilities, obviously not to swim necessarily, but to use those facilities. That's what having a portfolio of leisure services means for a city like Exeter. So the plan will give us that opportunity. Now, it also needs to undertake some other really important steps, given the context that we're in with this particular building. So we'd have to give notice to the Northbrook Community Trust. As I've said already, they own the building. It's leased by the City Council. We'd have to give it back. That would be the start of the process. Of course, I mentioned staff already. We're incredibly fortunate in Exeter. We have a group of dedicated, knowledgeable, and committed staff. We want to look after those people. So we'll be notifying those members of staff and, of course, users of the pool at the same time of what's likely to happen and inform them and keep them informed, really, of the process as we go forward. Now, linked to that, this council has an excellent organisational change process that protects staff who may be at risk of redundancy. No decisions have been taken about that. We haven't assessed whether people would need to be made redundant, but there is a process that we can enact that will protect and give proper consideration to those issues during this change process. So there's also a number of technical requirements. I'll be honest, I don't know all of the detail of this. I'm not an expert, but we do have people who obviously do understand that. It's basically a decommissioning process. So you empty the pool. Once that has happened, there is no real return from that. So we'd probably want to delay that process as long as we possibly could to enable that other engagement that I've mentioned to take place. But at some point, we will need to actually instigate that decommissioning. There's a few other issues as well that we will need to do. Most fundamentally, we'd need to return the building back to the Northbrook Trust in good order and in repair. And that would be in accordance with any lease or obligations. Then there's the really important issue of us reviewing things like existing classes, existing clubs, bookings, and seeing how we can transfer as much of that over to SSP and Riverside. So that all can be contained within that closure plan. And then finally, I've mentioned it already, but I want to end on this really, is that we'll work with our leisure members. We'll work with users of Northbrook, just like we have in the consultation process. We'll sit down, we'll listen to them, we'll work with them to find the best possible ways we can to enable them to carry on swimming in the fantastic environments that this council provides at St Sidwell's and at Riverside. We'll also work with those local schools, we'll talk to the teachers, and we'll ensure as best as we can that those young people can continue to have what is essentially life-saving swimming lessons going forward. And we'll work to the best of our ability to do that. So that's my presentation. That's the information that we've presented to you this evening. I welcome any questions from you on any of that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. You took us through that in a succinct but informative way. So on this occasion, I'm going to ask the members of the executive, is there any questions or points of clarification for Ian? And then I'll be coming back to contributions and statements and positions after we finish questions. Councillor Asbashin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that presentation, Ian, and thank you to all the members of the public who came yesterday and sat through our 4-hour meeting, or however long it was. So you mentioned in the equality impact assessment, and also picking up last night, there was a lot of concern about people with mental health issues and autism. Could you tell me, when SFP was being designed, did you liaise with any groups representing disabled, SEND and autism groups, please?
No, we'll do one at a time so we can hear it, so they don't get confused. And I will come to you, Bindu, and you will allocate the questions.
Hi, yes is the answer to that. So we had a thorough process when we were in the project build for St Sybil's Point, in which we liaised with a multitude of groups and individual users as well, to assure we had their feedback, and it was incorporated from a very early stage in the project brief, and we continue to work with those groups now.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor? No? Okay, Councillor Wright.
Yes, thank you. Just to continue from that question, thank you. As part of mitigation, would it be possible perhaps for the staff to arrange a quiet, relaxed session for anybody with autism, with SEND, whether that be children or adults, in order for them to be able to come and actually see the pool, maybe have a swim, because part of the anxiety that arises is from not knowing what to expect. So if that could be arranged, would that be part of the mitigation?
Yeah, I think the suggestion is that we actually look at a focus group potentially with users that can help advise us on what those sessions might look like, where they'd best be placed, times of the day are quite important as well. So yeah, absolutely, we'd be really happy to do that.
Anything else, Councillor, at this stage?
Sorry, yes, if I'm allowed
Yes,
a second one.
yes.
Apologies if it's in the report, but do we have a figure of how much it will cost to bring the pool in repair in accordance with the lease agreement before handing back to?
We don't have that precise information at the moment, but that would be part of the work that we do as part of the closure place, to work out the repairs that we would need to hand back within the terms of the lease. I would say it's quite an old lease, so we'll look at that carefully and see what our obligations are. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're handing it back in good order, so we'll look at that as part of the detailed process.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I sat through last night, 4 hours of it, and it was a very good discussion. We heard from campaign groups, very passionate about the pool that's close to their heart, and there were a lot of debate between councillors sat at this table, exploring all sorts of issues. But I think if I was to try and refine down 4 hours worth of debate, I would say that it kind of centred around costs, scale, capacity, level of usage. And I'm really proud of the leisure service that this council runs. It's really, really good. It's very popular. It's well run. We have 6 centres, 6 large centres, 5 large centres and 1 smaller centre. So just as a kind of reality check, if you like, over the last year, that service has seen 1.8 million visits. That's a lot of folk. So just to put in context the size of, or the amount of use that happens at Northbrook, can you answer how many people, say, in the last year attended Northbrook relative to that 1.8 million using the service?
I can, yes. It equates to 0.7% is the percentage, and the
Guys, come on, please. Just let's listen to the discussion, and this is an important issue. Thank you.
So currently we have 83 members at Northbrook, registered members.
Before I call Councillor Vizard, I don't want no councillor in this room to feel somehow they cannot speak their mind or say their view. They're elected to give their views, and you must do that. Councillor Vizard.
Thank you very much, Leader. The Appendix G to the reports talks about decarbonisation reports. I'm aware that Northbrook is responsible for about 9% of the carbon emissions from our leisure facilities in the city, so not insignificant. We heard last night in the discussion at scrutiny that the reasons why funding applications for decarbonisation funding were either unsuccessful or were not pursued, and that was to do with this issue of there being provision within the vicinity. So you might want to just reiterate that, but also can I ask how many pools there are within the Exeter area that are available and open to the public?
Thank you. Is that you, Kath?
So we've been working on this week actually, because there's been some changes in provision across private organisations across the city and also schools as well. So I'm hesitant to give you an exact figure, because from my understanding there are 2 primary schools which are about to open up their pools to public use, but there's also a private organisation which are looking to change that and pull that back, and there's some change in university swimming as well. So we're in a period of transition and change, but the trajectory is very much a positive one. And to give you just an idea, there is at least 6 or 7 that I can think of that are very definitely available for public use.
Okay.
In addition to our facilities.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. My question is just clarification about the opening times of Northbrook Pool, and this was touched on last night, but I think there was perhaps a little bit of confusion. The reason I'm asking about this is that I'm aware, as the ward councillor, having put a huge amount of personal time and energy into trying out all sorts of different hours and different sorts of sessions in order to encourage greater sort of knowledge and use of Northbrook. And this has been going on since the end of 2022. I certainly know that I was involved in putting posters up, putting information in various newsletters that were going out to everybody in my ward. So where there's been some information in the press that we haven't done anything, I can read out a poster I've got in front of me here, which has Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, open 9 until 5, Thursdays open 7:30 till 6, Saturday 8 till 12. So that is proof that it did happen. So I just want confirmation that I have a poster in front of me. We did the work, because we are being told by various means that it didn't happen. But I know as a ward councillor, it definitely happened, and I put a lot of work into it along with leisure centre staff. And I have to thank the staff at Northbrook Swimming Pool who agreed to their hours being shifted about so that we could actually try and improve the usage of that pool. And it doesn't look as if that worked, and I'm really disappointed about that. But the reality is that we did a huge amount of effort and work into increasing usage. So I'd just like you to confirm that I'm not making that up.
Can absolutely confirm that is the case, and that did happen. And we had a group internally that worked on that over a long period of time. We targeted school holidays specifically. We worked with yourself, Councillor Williams, and a number of your colleagues that were ward councillors at the time. We worked with schools. I know that you personally were out distributing leaflets. We had a targeted geo campaign on our digital platforms, so that was postcode targeted to the wards and the areas. We utilised our assets across the city in terms of our digital screens, so we were also reaching for a wider audience to ensure that the awareness of the facility, and we feel we have done as much as we can. And to touch on your point about the staff changing their hours, they were very willing to do that, and as you say, have been nothing but supportive in this process. So unfortunately, we have not seen an increase in numbers as demonstrated by the figure I just quoted.
Thank you. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from Councillor Vizard's question, so government funding is obviously highly sought after and competed over basically. So compared to other local authorities, how do we compare in terms of our council swimming provision? So in other words, say if Sports England are comparing us to say Cornwall, would we ever be likely to win funding considering the facilities we already have, including say fantastic SSP?
Cornwall's leisure provision is next to none now. Unfortunately, they closed the majority of their centres after the pandemic. I'm not up to date with where that sits today, I'm afraid, but that mirrors many authorities across the country. So I think, again, it's reminding ourselves that leisure is a discretionary service for Exeter City Council, and the decision was made by members in 2020 to bring that back in-house for our residents during a pandemic, I should add. So we are in a considerably better place than our neighbours and other authorities, and we do have, as we know, the UK's first passive house leisure centre in our city. So we're in an incredibly good position. But of course, we are working towards a cost-neutral leisure service, as we have talked about previously. So when it comes to funding, it's not a closed door. It depends on the criteria for the specific funding. So the specific funding that was offered previously was very much in favour of rural areas. But of course, as we've seen this week from announcements from the government, there is a change in those funding models, and I'm sure that we'll see that change come filter down.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to ask a question if I can. And of course, we heard last week government making an announcement of nearly 200 million to go for swimming and everything else. And so people think, well, there you go then, have some of that. So one, could you sort of advise us of what the likelihood would be that we would qualify for some of that? And would that not just help with the capital, which is 2.1 million, according to the slides up there, but how would that contribute to the £286,000 revenue cost net that is costing us to keep it? Is that where the panacea is for us? Because some people have said that, and I want to explore that with you. And what guidance or what have you heard about that at this moment in time?
So the guidance so far has been hasn't been detailed. So I'd be cautious in what I say, but my understanding is that it won't be for capital expenditure, and I believe that it's more events, working towards sporting events, and that's the extent of my knowledge on that at the moment, I'm afraid. But very, very much capital expenditure, so as you've just talked about, would not be part of that.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Ian.
I think just to say as well that we this information is very new. We haven't properly evaluated it, so I wouldn't want to mislead Exeter. We'll go and find out exactly what the criteria are, if indeed they've been published, and we'll explore that. As you would imagine, it's something that we will be on to very quickly, but we don't know precisely what that looks like at the moment.
Thank you very much. Okay, if there's nobody else with the questions at this moment in time, I want us to go into the discussion, and I just want to quickly remind ourselves of your presentation. Just really scan through it, Ian, because I thought it was very helpful. You can go back to the start, and I suppose it all started there, of course. Lovely, beautiful picture. The recommendations, next one, and this was the chronology, which was very important. Just remind ourselves of that. Next one. And this was the information which the officers based the recommendations. We need to understand that. And this was how we set the budget, consultation on the budget, what the public were telling us and what the views were. The next one. And then the council budget for 2025, how we came to that decision. And there's the financial case. And so there we are. And then it came up to some of the stuff about the public consultation. That's important. The qualities impact assessment, and this is where I'm hoping we'll make some contributions on how we can try to deal with some of this. and then obviously the next steps. And if we just leave it on the next steps, I really do think that is so important, what we need to focus upon as the executive. So obviously, many of us have been living this and thinking about this and discussing it for some time. And before I go into the discussion, I'd like to make a few remarks that I've prepared. So, colleagues, the recommendation before us this evening is to close Northbrook swimming pool. Let me say firstly that this is not a decision that we would have wanted to have considered. And I think I can speak on behalf of us all, as well as the ward members, and I know members more widely. We have had numerous conversations and sleepless and troubled times over this. Ideally, I would have wanted to have taken this decision for all members at full council, but I've been advised by the officer that this is a matter reserved for the executive, and that is why it will be a resolved item. Members, though, have had the opportunity to participate in the discussion at scrutiny only last night, as well as to engage with users and communities through our consultation. It, however, falls to the Labour administration of this council via this executive committee to consider this very difficult decision. I reflect that sometimes, for all the great benefits that we have delivered and we will continue to deliver in Exeter, it must be more comfortable to be in opposition where many thoughtful suggestions might be made in the knowledge that the tough decisions will be made by others. Our leisure service covers the whole city, and we govern for the whole city. We must do what's best for all of the residents in Exeter. The leisure service in Exeter has been on a journey for some time, since we took it back in-house from a private contractor in 2020, a decision which this Labour group is very, very proud of. The pandemic struck, which of course was a massive impact on our leisure services, amongst any, and which saw many other local authorities, swimming and leisure service, not recover and had to close. We managed to keep going. We have studied the report in depth, carefully considered the consultation results, and have full regard to the equality impact assessment. We've also listened to the issues raised at last night's scrutiny committee. But the key facts are there is low usage of the pool compared to its high running cost. There is a significant capital investment needed to bring the building up to acceptable modern standards in order to make it accessible for disabled people, to reduce carbon emissions, both of which are essential. The figures in the report speak for themselves, as uncomfortable as they may appear. It would cost, as we've been told, 2.1 million, albeit over a period of time, to bring the pool up to modern standards. That could not be ignored. That money from the capital budget would need to be found from somewhere. We have a capital budget of £36 million of what we need to do in this city. A decision would have to be made where this sat within that capital budget by all councillors. Even if we accepted an ongoing heavy subsidy that we use to support this pool, it is simply not acceptable to operate a facility that does not comply with the Disability Discrimination Act or the Equality Act. We took the service back in-house because we wanted to create the best possible facilities for people in Exeter. And when you look at the quality of the offer across the city and the membership we have indeed been successful. We've invested heavily in the leisure services and will continue to do so because health and well-being of all residents in Exeter is a key priority. I remind you of the facilities we have at the arena close by. Also our plans for Womford, which are still not funded at this moment in time. These are important things that we need to do for the health and well-being for the people of our city. We know that swimming is an important part of the national curriculum, And we will continue to work with local schools to ensure that we provide our children with a safe and welcoming environment in our other two pools, so they continue their swimming lessons. I'm very proud of the fact that in 2024, more than 2,500 young children learnt to swim at St Sibyls Point, and more than 2,000 young people learnt to swim at the riverside. That's 4,500 over the city in 1 year. The city will continue to be served by two fantastic publicly owned swimming pools, which have received heavy investment to ensure they have a long-term viability. This is something that we are simply not just able to do at Northbrook. As long as the report highlights, since 2020, we provided over £686,000 in subsidy. We have carried out extensive promotional and marketing campaigns, but despite best efforts of all people, including councillors and local people, usage has unfortunately remained low, and this has been the case for a long time. This year, councillors were asked to identify £3.5 million in savings to set a balanced budget. The need for savings from the leisure centre service was identified, and officers began a major consultation to assess the impact of the potential closure of Northbrook. The consultation was extremely thorough, and I've looked carefully at the results, which are highlighted in the detailed report. We have carried out an impact assessment, and I fully understand that some vulnerable people, including those with protected characteristics, will be impacted by this decision. And of course, we will get this. And we will do everything we can to mitigate those measures as described behind me. If the executive decides to close Northbrook Pool this evening, our officers will work hard to ensure that all barriers to people accessing other facilities are removed wherever it is possible. If agreed tonight, the closure process would take, as we've heard, up to 12 weeks. This will give officers time to set up focus groups, talk with teachers, engage leisure members to work out ways to help people transition to St Sibyls and/or Riverside. We are fortunate in having committed and knowledgeable staff at our leisure centres who can facilitate this process. I have noted one of the recommendations which was proposed by Councillor Parkhouse and agreed at last night's scrutiny committee, that the executive discuss the possibility of community ownership from the Northbrook Trust with the Northbrook Trust and interested parties, including community groups. Should the executive decide to close Northbrook Swimming Pool this evening, I would like to propose adding this additional recommendation by asking officers to reach out to the trust who own the facility and for those discussions together with local stakeholders. The additional recommendation would read, this council is committed to assisting in the facilitation of this, but of course, it will be a matter for any group coming forward, and we will support where we can. I would also like to propose an amendment to the second recommendation to indicate that the decision will be delegated to the strategic director in consultation with the portfolio holder, which is myself. On the second recommendation from scrutiny related to the use of a VAT refund. This refund is being held in order to protect the council's financial position in a situation where the council may be approached to make a refund. I cannot play fast and loose with the finances of the council in this way at this stage. This issue, therefore, will be further explored in the setting the budget for next year, in which all members will be involved. I stress again, the council has a duty to do what's best for the whole city with the resources available. And as difficult as it is, I will be accepting with a great deal of regret the recommendation to close the pool. I now open it up to debate. amongst the executive members. Sorry, a bit of a party pooper, but there you go. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, we all know that this is a difficult decision. Our fantastic communities across our city are close to my heart, which is why I came into local politics and why I'm honoured to lead our leisure service. It's important to our communities, it's important to our residents. Access to our facilities can make a huge difference in many different ways to individual residents, and that's shown up through the Equality Impact Assessment, which applies across our whole leisure service. And although it got a laugh from the members of the public, that is significant numbers that the service meets. 1.8 million users in the last year of our service, and that's something I'm proud of. So I do take our financial constraints as a council extremely seriously. I have to. It's why I was elected. And I understand that it's my duty to honour that trust placed in me by making balanced, informed decisions. I have thought long and hard on this matter. I really have, trying to weigh up the significant costs that are embedded in this small facility against the real and heartfelt stories of the benefits of users and how they value the centre. I have to say that there is a great deal of conflicting and at times misleading information in circulation, and that has made it harder to arrive at the best possible decision, and also makes it difficult for residents and members of the area, members of the centre, to fully follow the reasoning behind what we're doing. There is no hidden agenda here. It is a hard decision. I stood for election for many positive reasons, and like everyone at this table, closing valuable community facilities was not one of them. But taking difficult decisions in the long-term interest of our city as a whole is part of that responsibility. I represent Pinhoe. I'm a Pinhoe councillor. The residents there are of highest priority to me, but at the same time, they have elected me to represent them on the city's council. That means I also have to value and try and sustain and protect what is important to this city, and the leisure service is important to this city. So the proposal to close Northbrook swimming pool is not one I take lightly. I've listened carefully to all sides, attended most of the focus groups that were mentioned on the slides. I've been there, I've sat and listened to individual stories. I've heard the heartfelt pleas to not close the pool. I've heard what value the pool represents to those individuals. I've looked through all of the reports, the consultation report, the impact assessment, lots and lots of information coming to me. I've looked at the information that is out being circulated, not all of it which is obviously fact-based, and some of it is interpreted from partial information. I really do understand how that comes. I have been a campaigner myself in the past, trying to protect facilities. I know the drive that you have to try and change a decision that is unavoidable. But Northbrook has served the city well for many years and has provided a calm, quieter pool environment, meeting the needs of a particular group of residents seeking a less busy space. If we had unlimited funds, I would love to provide that space, that quiet space, for individuals that actually value that. I'd like to put one of those in every ward in the city. Unfortunately, money is extremely tight. However, as a council, we have a responsibility to ensure the best value of public money and to manage the city's leisure estate in a way that is both financially and environmentally sustainable. Each year, we are required to set a balanced budget. It's a legal requirement, and it's a responsibility we take seriously on your behalf as the residents of the city. This means planning how to spend the funds we have in the most effective way. This year, the leisure service I lead was asked to contribute to the savings the council must make. And as you can imagine, that's difficult. And as we heard from the slides, that meant we were looking not at shaving off a few £1,000s here and there. The amount we needed to save meant we looked at the centres we run. We looked at the level of usage in each of those centres, and we looked at how sustainable they were. We wanted to minimise the impact of changes that we made, and therefore Northbrook Pool became one of the centres that we had to look at seriously. The financial reality is that Northbrook operates at a significant deficit. Whether we want to argue over it, whether it's 1% of the leisure service users of the city that use it, or 1.5%, that's still very, very small. I know it's extremely important to that 1%, but it is still a very small proportion of those who use the service. 1.8 visits this year, over the last year. That is significant, and the city as a whole is something we need to sustain the leisure service for. Keeping it open would require, as we've heard, at least 2.1 million in capital investments over time, but it's still money we have to find. And that's to bring it up to an acceptable compliant standards, funds we simply don't have. And without those, we are running a service where if I turn up and I'm a disabled man in a wheelchair, I can't even get into the reception area. If I do get in there, it's flat, I can get to the changing rooms. There's no disabled changing cubicle there, but I can change. I come back out, phenomenally steep, sharp, uncomfortable steps down to the pool. If I'm in a wheelchair, of course, beyond question, I can't do it. So I have to go back out, go back down the steps somehow, into the street, wearing my swimming costume. We're pushed around to the fire door where I can be let in. Now, my wife's got a disability, and she struggles through life. She achieves what she can achieve, and she does it with dignity. The dignity is something that's very important to disabled people everywhere. And that scenario I've just shared with you does not sound very dignified. It is not disabled accessible. It's a similar issue for just myself as a able-bodied man. If I turn up there, I can climb the stairs, I can get to the reception, I can change in the change room. It's not pleasant, but I can. It's that the room is not in a great state. Then to get to the pool, I have to go down some very sharp, edged, steep stairs. At my age now, I'm 60 years old, I'm fairly mobile. Give me 10 years, give me 15 years, and I'm not sure I want to go down steep stairs like that, where to fall down them would do me serious injury. So it isn't something that we can fudge over. We went to Northbrook Pool, we went all around it. I went into the boiler room, and it's like a set from a museum somewhere. It is frighteningly old. We've struggled as leading the leisure service. I've struggled to try and keep this centre open. But what we're in a situation where it's not if the boiler reaches a breakdown that is irreparable, it's when. Those parts are no longer available. We buy similar parts, and the team do a fantastic job jury rigging and ensuring that somehow that boiler keeps going, that air vent system keeps going. It's not if, it's when that system will fail. And if it fails, we are looking at a phenomenal reinvestment needed. And for that period, it will be shut. And we hear how important this pool is to everybody. It will be shut with no warning, long term, There's no transition. There's no easing you into other alternative areas of swimming or exercise. It would just be bang, it's shut. Don't want that to happen to anybody. Now, Exeter is fortunate to have a modern and diverse leisure offer. It's not all about swimming. Swimming doesn't work for everybody, and we recognise that. So most of our centres, Riverside, St Sidwell's Point, you can go there with your family, and if you want to ride a bike, go in a spin studio, lift some weights, go and do yoga while they have a swim. That's what a modern offer is about. And I'm really pleased that across our leisure centres, we are able to provide that. We've got the much improved Riverside Leisure Centre. New equipment just gone into there. Fantastic. Go down there. It will assess where you are in your life. You can tell it what you want to achieve in the gym section. It's brilliant. Beyond words really as to what we offer from within the public sector with extremely tight budgets. What we offer to the citizens of Exeter is amazing. We have the Wanford Leisure Centre, which is incredibly popular, as is the Iska Centre out on the edge of Pinhoe and Mincing Lake. Now we hear a lot about the community spirit that's kind of grown around the use of this pool, and I know that's the case, and I know that they meet outside of the pool, that they have a community connection. They meet in the Iska Centre. The Iska Centre is not shutting. The Iska Centre is continuing. Lots of community activity happens there from Mincing Lake, from Pinhoe. There's lots of events that happen there, and that will continue. We also have top quality athletics stadium at the arena, and that is a real gem. That's a real feather in our cap. It is a top quality facility used by some great athletes. And across all these sites, we've got 4 modern swimming pools available. And as we heard, there's 5 or 6 or more pools in addition to that. Sports England did a 60-odd page report analysing the level of pool usage. Not a quick 2-page report as some organisations might do. This took a long time to put together. It engaged stakeholders. It was a 60-page, deep, in-depth analysis of swimming pools, and we came out in the high 90% use. Nationally, it's 90%. Our neighbouring districts, it's well below that. It's into the 80s. We deliver as a city, and it's not down to the city council. This is the city providing swimming opportunities. We are extremely good, well above the average. And these venues are better equipped to deliver inclusive, high quality, financial, sustainable leisure services. And that's important to me, and it's important to our residents. And I'm pleased to lead a service that contributes extensively to that. So this is a difficult but necessary decision I don't want to have to make. I remain committed to working with local communities and partners to ensure that access to sport, health and well-being remains a citywide priority. The only way I can do that is to make these hard decisions that I do not want to make. I do not want to disappoint people. I do not want to disconnect people from something that they value, something that they feel is incredibly important to their everyday life. I don't want to do that, but equally, I don't want to head up a failed service that lets down 1.8 million people a year because we've gone bust. So it's an extremely difficult decision I do not want to make, but I have to. I was elected by the people of Pinhoe to represent them and make these difficult decisions. So I'm going to have to make that decision on behalf of the wider city. So I will be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's about 1.3 million, I've been told, but anyway. I think I've got Councillor Fole, who was next, wants to make a contribution.
Thank you, Lido. I think, as Councillor Wood suggests, this is a head versus heart argument at times. And my heart went out yesterday to the commitment of passion and the compelling arguments that were being made by those people in favour of keeping the pool open. On the other side, I have to balance that with my head And I did go and visit Northbrook Pool, spoke with managers there, spoke with officers afterwards. And there's 4 issues I was particularly concerned about. And Ian, I think you probably covered them in your very good introduction, but I'd just like you to tell you and Kath to tell me if I'm wrong. But I had the 4 S's: staff redundancies, schools, send, and subsidies. And with being an old socialist, staff redundancies were high on my list, and he seemed to suggest that every effort would be made to consult with trade unions, to look at staff redundancies, and to look at the churn within the leisure industry, to keep that to a minimum, is my understanding. Another hat I wear is as a retired primary school head teacher, and so I'm particularly interested in the future for schools. Again, my understanding from speaking to the managers at Northbrook and to the officers is that every effort will be made to include all 5 of those schools affected within the timetable at St. Sidwell's. You're nodding again. Okay.
It's across both sites, so with it, the timetables with St. Sidwell's and Riverside.
Many of the children I helped educate over my years in headship had statements of special educational need, as I recall then, had disabilities. I had children with juvenile arthritis who benefited from hydrotherapy in certain pools, other children who needed particular assistance. And one of my questions to the managers at Northbrook was, were they able to deal with that level of disability? The answer was no. But also I was concerned, as Councillor Duncan Wood was, about the lack of access for both males and females. Females having to go around and use, and disabled people to use the fire exit, and the 2 steep flights of steps for males. And I understand that people with disabilities would be, in fact, better served at our other facilities.
Thank you.
The last, and the 4th S, the subsidies, again, I think you touched on it. We're talking about subsidising the Northbrook to the tune of something like £250,000 a year for 83 members, and it's equating to £160,000 for the 70 people per year, for the 70 people who use the pool each week. Is mine? Are you happy?
I think Ian wants to come back on some of those issues. I'll let Ian come back.
Thank you, Councillor Falk, for those contributions. I think there were some of those figures that you quoted there. We just want to clarify.
Yeah.
Kath will do that now.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, just a couple of points. Actually, Councillor Wood, you talked about 1.8 million users. It's actually visits. Yes,
sorry, visits.
That's okay, but I just wanted to make sure we're on the right. And you talked about the not being able to deal with the specifically the children with educational needs at Northbrook Pool. I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. I think I know that we have had classes and we are able to do that, but it is better equipped. So your point about a better experience for those children in our other sites is accurate.
Thank you, Kath. Okay, Paul. Councillor Asvashit, then Councillor Vizard, then Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as Councillor Foll and Councillor Wood have said, none of us get elected to close swimming pools. This is really hard, whether you believe it or not. I listened to everyone yesterday. I've read the report. I've read all the comments. I would just like to say thank you to Councillor Parkhouse for her recommendation that we have here tonight, which was voted on by all but one councillor on the committee yesterday, I believe. The community who came along as well and put up with the 4-hour meeting are obviously very, very passionate, and I believe that this could be a wonderful opportunity for them. going forward if that's the way that we decide to go. Therefore, I will be definitely supporting that. Thank you.
Councillor Vizard.
Thank you, Leader. Gosh, well, I'd rather be anywhere else than here this evening making this decision. That's for sure. I wanted to start by thanking the community whose contributions last night were really important and were heard, and their campaign has been tremendous and a credit to them. And we have listened, and it makes this decision all the harder when you know that a community values this so greatly, and I do understand that. I want to also thank officers and Councillor Wood, who have all worked very hard on this, and I have absolutely no doubt that they have the best interests of the city and our residents at heart. If I didn't think that, I wouldn't be sat here now. So thank you for your efforts. This is a decision that's been a very, very long time coming. I think it's fair to say this council has invested in this pool, has kept it alive for as long as we have been able to, despite some very, very difficult times. I think we've hit a crunch point and a tipping point now, which is why this decision's in front of us. But I do want to underline the efforts over the years, certainly the years since I've been a councillor and before that, where repairs and maintenance have been completed, where this place has been kept from this point for very good reasons, for as long as we possibly could do so. So this is a very painful decision. There's no question about that, and I welcome the full consultation process that's been undertaken. I take note very much of the equality impact assessments. These need to be mitigated. I'm reassured that they will be. I'm encouraged that with the proposal for last night's scrutiny, the recommendation that's come forward and that we hopefully will accept this evening, that there will be an opportunity, and I hope our community team will do what they can and are able to help facilitate opportunities for community groups to discuss a way forward. And the scrutiny meeting last night was very, very important. It was good that it was long because it needed to be. I think that was a deep dive. I think an awful lot of information came out of that. I gathered a lot more knowledge to support my decision this evening. I think it's notable that out of that meeting last night, there were good recommendations. Some of those included asking the council to take a pause. I think that would be very difficult budget-wise to undertake. I understand where that idea comes from, but I think postponing a decision is not the right way forward. But it's also notable that there was no particular specific discussion or recommendation around a different decision last night about the council retaining and continuing to invest in this site. It was all about other options, including community use. So I think there is a sort of unanimity amongst councillors that we can't continue along this road, sad though that is. It's worth again underlining that this leisure officer is a discretionary service. It is not a statutory service the councils provide, and many towns and cities across the country have closed their pools or have allowed the private sector wholly to provide what provision there is. And we've heard about the strong provision in Exeter, the number of pools that we do have that are open to the public beyond our own service, and our investment in Riverside and in SSP has been a real commitment to our leisure offer in this city. So this is an ailing and ageing building. There's clear choice about how we invest our money, not just the 2.1 million approximate estimate for capital expenditure that would be required, but that 287,000 per annum as well. So there's a decision around how we invest our money, where we invest our money, and any decision that's a different decision about how we spend our budget will have an impact on some other area of our expenditure. My concern about going down that road is that a different decision could have a greater impact on more people across the city, because it wouldn't be something simple. It would be a very, very significant. It might be another part of our leisure facility we'd have to look at instead. So I think for all of those reasons, I come to the conclusion that I need to support the recommendation this evening, but I do so with an incredibly heavy heart. It's perhaps the most difficult decision I've had to make in my time, and we've had to make some difficult ones after years of austerity. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you everybody for your contributions, which I think have been excellent.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Phil. And again, to reiterate a huge thanks and appreciation to the supporters of the pool, the members of the community that have just done a brilliant job in being able to organise yourselves to have your voices heard and to bring things to us to consider that we may not have been aware of before. And even though perhaps the result of the decision that we are going to make tonight will not be the result that you wanted, an important part for me is that you've made yourselves known and you've made your feelings, your issues, your stories known. So when it comes to actually mitigating the aspects of the impact assessment, that you are there ready and waiting to work with us and with officers so that mitigations can be put in so that you are you're not too adversely affected by this, and that there can be things explored for you so that you can carry on with your groups and you can carry on.
No idea. Absolutely no idea.
Okay, thank you. Go on, Councillor.
Okay. And I can understand that depth of feeling as well. I do live in the area. My eldest child learnt to swim there. My elderly mother actually learnt to swim there as part of the WEFD. I understand the connection to it, the fact that it is very accessible and local to a lot of people that wouldn't normally be travelling across the city or into the city. I totally understand that. There has been a point made tonight about the fact that there are other at least 6 or 7 pools in the city that are open to the public. And a lot of these, I'm only aware of a couple. I know the university pool is open to the public and St Luke's as well. And Kath has just said there may be some primary schools that are opening to the public. So I'd ask that the officers with the mitigation to work with people isn't just to mitigate to bring people into the 2 other council pools if that's not appropriate for them, and there are other smaller pools that might be better suited to them, that is part of the work of the mitigation. As everybody has said, really heavy heart tonight. When we are members of the community as well, we don't get beamed in here from other parts of the country. We all live here. We're locals. We're residents as well as councillors, and when we become elected, we want to do and still want to do the best for everybody, but that does involve making decisions that sometimes will go against our heart, what we would really like to be able to do if we were able for a section of the community, a geographic area, a community group, but have to weigh it up against the impact of maintaining a legal budget and provision for the rest of Exeter. So I am going to support tonight these recommendations with the amendment that Phil is going to talk about. I do it with a heavy heart, as we all do, but I hope that we can mitigate the impact of this to make it as positive outcome as we possibly can.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williams, then Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Leader. I'm not going to repeat everything that my fellow councillors have already said because, yes, it's exactly what I feel as well. I would like to thank the campaign group for all the huge amount of work and effort they've put into drawing issues to our attention. Particularly like to thank Sarah Hornsby, Richard Ilsley and Colleen Latola for their presentations last night. I'd like to thank the scrutiny members who asked very detailed questions. We thoroughly looked at all the issues. All the executive were there last night for 4 hours. I've got 13 pages of notes that I took So I don't think that we can say that we didn't look and we haven't been looking into this thoroughly. When we look at the public consultation, I participated in I attended one of the focus groups, and I was very impressed that people were revealing very, very personal information with officers there, and it's all been captured in a very detailed report. There is so much information there that we probably have no idea of the sort of what needs were being met. But what it is good is that those needs can be additionally addressed at our existing other pools. Because what we have to remember is that we're not taking swimming pool provision away from the residents of Exeter. We have got the provision. We're talking about one small pool, which is very, very personal to the users that use it. But if you actually look at the statistics, and I know that Councillor Poll, my fellow ward councillor, has been looking into this, we've been scratching our heads, looking, is there anything we can do to try and save this pool? And we have to say that if you actually look, the long and the short of it is, it's the level of use. That for our swimming sessions, it's 13%, and that 24, that means on average of 3 people per swimming session. And do I believe that? Yes, I do. Because a couple of weeks ago, I went along to the pool and there was 1 person swimming in there. I went on another day, there were 3 people in there. So I think we have to accept the reality that the usage is too low to sustain it. And given the condition of the pool, and as I think it was Councillor Wood, we went to visit and had a look at it, and it just looks as if it's about to break down. It's rusty, it's absolutely shocking. And what the current users are having to actually put up with, male showers not working because it leaks into the plant below. I mean, it's not safe. We have to close it. And I am the ward councillor, and I'm saying that, and it breaks my heart to have to say that, because I've been fighting for so many years to keep it open. But it's come to a point where we can't keep throwing money at something. We wouldn't be doing this with a car that was sort of so many years old. We say, right, enough's enough. We've got to this point with this pool. And so what I would say to users and residents is, we have a fantastic leisure team. We know that they're doing a very, very thorough job. They've done a thorough job in analysing the needs of our users. And I think we need to trust them with the transition, the progress of the transition, that they will work with our users, with those focus groups, to actually identify ways that we can actually overcome the barriers that those users are telling us actually prevent them from considering Riverside or SSP or other pools. And I am confident, I have faith in our team that they will actually find solutions that are suitable for our residents and our users. And what I'm going to do is I'm asking the community to have the same faith that I have in our team over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Patrick.
Councillor Williams has actually covered some of the points I was going to make. All I was going to say is that, we heard many mentions yesterday of the significant maintenance issues, not least the failing boiler and the non-working showers. And it's clear that facilities are just not fit for purpose in 2025, not to be offered by City Council. And possibly the condition of this facility has contributed towards the poor attendance figures, like 3 people swimming, because people are choosing not to visit there and instead they're visiting SSP or Riverside, those far superior, safer, accessible resources. There's no sticking plaster here, and it does concern me about people using facility that does have so many significant problems. And I genuinely hope that as many members of the community, as able to, and choose to use those much higher standard facilities that we do offer. And the decision to close is incredibly difficult for everyone here. And of course for the community, is upsetting, and there isn't a council officer here that doesn't find this difficult. However, I consider it to be a decision that unfortunately we do have to make to close Northbrook.
Thank you, Councillor. I think I've gone through all the councillors. I don't know if there's any officers need to do. I just wanted, before I invite members of the opposition to come forward. I just want to remind ourselves on the recommendations to close, but more importantly, that we are adopting the scrutiny committee recommendation to start looking with the community to talk about, and to the trust to talk about a potential alternative model that they could get involved in. We will be facilitating that how we can. That is the detail that will come forward through the period of 12 weeks. Or 12, look, that's not hard and fast, but that is, we have to have something to talk to. We will want to help and see, because there's a couple of proposals have been put to us at the last moment. There you go. Well, look, these proposals can now come forward, and we will do what we can. So I want to remind it, and on the VAT, I've told you what we're going to do about that. That is a earmarked reserve. It's a matter for the council to make a decision on how we deal with that, as far as I'm concerned, and we will deal with that in the budget setting. So, leaders, we listened to you last night, and I know you've listened to us. We've heard many of you came up with proposals about community. I'm not trying to curtail debate, but I'd rather not we start to unpick all of this right back. Oh, you shouldn't have done this. You've I don't want, that's not really what we're here to decide tonight. So if you want to make a contribution, helping us before we vote on these recommendations, we would like to hear it. So I'm going to go across the room. Councillor Haig, do you want to come forward?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's very hot in the cheap seats, so they're doing really well back there, hanging on in there. Chair, thank you for clarity on the amendment. You heard my full brief for the Charitable Community Trusts last night at scrutiny, so I'll be brief. I fully recognise the financial pressures facing Exeter Council and the legal obligations to deliver a balanced budget. I understand that the proposal to withdraw the subsidy from Northbrook forms part of that challenge. Tonight, I'm simply asking that you support the amendment and that during the 12-week transition period, the community be given the opportunity to bring forward a detailed, costed proposal to operate Northbrook Pool under a charitable trust model, a model that is already proven locally through the success of Topsham Pool. During this window, the community group could work collaboratively with our Exeter City officers, Sport England, Devon County Council and the Northbrook Trust to test viability, secure backing and build a sustainable model for the future. Last night, the scrutiny committee, after listening to the residents, did formally recommend that the executive explore this route. There is clear local appetite and specialised support that has already been offered to help the group move forward. After nearly 4 hours of discussion, it felt though that we were at risk of losing sight of our residents' voices. So tonight, all I ask is that you do support this amendment as a fair, reasonable opportunity to demonstrate that a community-led solution is genuinely worth serious consideration.
Thank you, Councillor, and I hope you can be assured that we had listened to scrutiny last night. And thank you for that, and we hope that support is there. Thank you.
May I just ask one question?
You can.
Okay. I just wanted to know, is there a financial penalty to end the Northbrook Trust lease? Because it's still quite a significant period of time to run on it.
Yeah, there's no to that.
That's great. And if you would just indulge me one more thing. My fellow co-leader, Councillor Hughes and I would like to formally have it noted that we believe we have a duty of care to support and protect our officers, particularly in the workplace, where they are often required to make difficult decisions regarding the council's finances. Respect is fundamental to maintaining healthy professional relationships, and it is vital we foster a culture where our officers feel safe, valued and supported both within and outside the council.
Thank you for that, Councillor Haig. That was an important statement you made at the end, and indeed, we are all suffering some form of online and abuse and misrepresentation and name calling, and thank you for that. And the officers are dealing with that. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Leader. I have nothing to add to the debate other than what I said in full council what I said last night. But thank you for the invitation.
And just to say, although it is taken on board what you said last night, and we have listened to it, and what that model looks like of governance and whatever, we just don't know at the moment. That'll be a matter to be decided, because I know you were quite specific, and that will be decided and discussed with the relevant people at the time. Councillor Mitchell, we didn't have the benefit of you last night, but I'm hoping you're not going to take us right back to the 25th of February, because we've come from there. No, if you could speak to the recommendations, that would be much appreciated, because this has been a long journey for everybody.
Use my constitutional rights under Standing Order 44 as delegated to leaders. Thank you, Chair.
But don't forget I'm the chair of this committee, all right?
Yes, but you're also
Okay,
governed by the Constitution.
Yeah, I am, and I will apply the Constitution, so let's not start.
And I welcome the comments you made earlier about quality of comments to be made by members. My concern on this one is following on from the meeting last night. I feel there were some questions that weren't answered, which I'd like to pose and put into the mix that you might wish to come to. I don't think it affects the decision, but it provides a further illumination on the matter. As I said, my concern throughout this has been that the decision was about consultation on closure rather than consultation on the future of it, which might include closure. And I think in future, if we're in this situation, that's something as a council we need to consider, because closure is one option. It might not be the only option available. As we know from the amendment this evening, another option is being offered beyond our ownership or control of the property. So I think that, in a way, in effect, stokes up public resentment when they feel the decision has been made, even though you've got to go through public consultation, that the other options are not then considered. And this is the problem with some of the evidence gathered. It's all worked on a premise, not a range of premises that you can consider. I think it might have been partly mentioned by Councillor Haig in her comments. I was somewhat concerned last night there were no details of the lease and the lease arrangements and any costs that we might be incurred in regard to giving up the lease, because obviously early termination of a 70-year-old lease might imply cost to the council, and that was not mentioned. Another issue that arose was on the revenue chart. I forget which table it was on, but on the revenue chart, Councillor Fulham asked a question about labour charges going up quite dramatically from last year to this year. And this year's were only a partial year, it wasn't a complete year, so like a 30% increase. And really, the question was, is that due to increased staffing hours? In other words, we're having more people at the facility for a longer period, or was it due to increasing staff costs? And in view of the, I think, which portfolio, which I think it was Bob mentioned, the situation about staff. Clearly, staffing costs were a high percentage of the revenue costs. Unless you are making those staff redundant, if you're transferring to another service, you haven't got a net saving on that. So just clarify whether that had been built in to the accounting system. I'm very concerned that any decision by the council to unilaterally end this lease before a community initiative can be explored with the trust negates the influence of this council in obtaining a lease transfer. I think we've got to do our best for the community if they can come up with a project, and I think we have to look at the timing of when we forego our lease, because clearly once we forego the lease, the trustee have got no interest in discussing anything with us because we no longer have an interest in it. I'd like this evening, like so many, to thank the community users and supporters of the pool. To gather 2,000 plus signatures is no mean achievement. Those also politicians will know that on the street and try to gather that momentum. I fully support the concept of community asset transfer, and I'm pleased that the leader has put that option from scrutiny and the VAT option addition to this motion. As you're aware, at council, we did not support your budget because the budget put forward by us as an opposition included no cuts to leisure services. Finally, one thing has arrived, and I think from general consideration, and as a councillor, I have to rely on reports from officers and the council as a basis of my determination of issues facing the council. Recent investigative journalism and the work of the campaign group claim that in regard to this issue, this may not be so. Last night, we were told that the information we were given was 100% verified, the data 100% verified. So am I faced with quality investigative journalism or fake news?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to run through those. About the consultation on closure, I know what you say there, and I'll discuss that with the directors. Hopefully, it's not a conversation I'm going to have on a regular basis, but are there alternatives? And generally, we do find alternatives in the monitoring officers' report, in the 151 officers' report of most reports that comes out. What are the alternatives? But I take the point on what you're saying, where they're sort of main office. The costs, well, you've had the answer on that about the ending the lease. The revenue, Councillor Fulham had his answer last night. We are not rehearsing the scrutiny committee and those questions. And remember, if a question's been asked in another committee, it shouldn't be asked again. So just to let you know that. Explore the trust. And of course, yes, I'm mindful that this is not a clever proposal for us to talk them out of time, for one of a better expression. Oh, well, I know you can't get your act together. 12 weeks is up. It's no, we are not going to adopt that attitude. We will commence those discussions right away. What I'm going to do is leave it with those people who are professionals and deal with these things to advise us and to deal with it. I'm not going to put my hand on it because it's not a matter for me. We've got a lot of professional people who will deal with this in consultation, and I feel sure they've already got some thoughts on that following any decision tonight. And we will work with those people, and as we say, we are sincere in saying we will facilitate that if there is a community asset transfer, and we will do all what we can to facilitate that, I can assure you. And as we're about relying on reports last night, well, look, I have trust and confidence in the directors that we appoint, that I work with. If I didn't, I'd be taking another approach with them. I'm more than happy. I'm not going to score cheap points, and I'm not going to remark about any of investigatory journalism in relation to that. So thank you very much. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much, and it's been very interesting to hear the discussion this evening. I do want to thank the community for their passionate and informed speeches, and thank them for their work on this issue. I want to follow up with comments from Councillor Wood, who said that there's a lot of misinformation. I think there is a lesson here for everybody about what and how information can be best provided to councillors and the public. And perhaps there does need to be a process or some sort of options appraisal, which happens long before it reaches a report, when community assets are considered for closure. I'm disappointed that community asset transfer and the policy or community approach was not given early proper consideration, especially as the portfolio holder explained to us that the council knew that the pool was struggling at least 2 years ago. 2 years would have been a good length of time to develop a community partnership solution, especially as we remembered within the budget that there was no advance notice of the pool's closure and no opportunity or process. It's been quite hard for the community to come forward to know how to say, yeah, we're up for taking this on. So I am actually quite amazed that in a short period of time there's been more than one potential group interested in doing so. And so that's really positive for the council and the community. Just last night from the discussion, we also knew that the 4 heads of terms of the lease, we didn't need to see the whole detail, was not shared. There might have been significant points that your decision tonight rests on, which seemed to rest last night on the interpretation of an email, which I was quite concerned about. It was interpretation of an email, not a legal opinion on the lease. So we're not quite clear about the liability that the council is opening itself up to. So we heard about the decommissioning process. We don't know the extent to which we'll be expected to do that. We don't know how much that will cost the council. Yesterday we heard that the costs relating to meeting the requirements of the Equality Act 2010 were not professional costs on specific things, but an estimate. And I do remain concerned about the financial cost of the investment plans. And I was very pleased to hear that the directors highlighted this evening that the investment plan will be over a number of years and not an in-year expenditure as the report implies. And I'm very unclear. We've heard different figures again tonight about the exact revenue costs, and that's something that the executive do need to consider. I mean, these cuts fall far short of the 568k required, and actually, so there's a question about what other impact will there be on leisure services. And we don't know the cost of the closure, and the actions taken to mitigate the closure, that could actually increase the demand on the budget. So we have heard that the decision would disproportionately impact on people who are older, people with disabilities, and also children. So I'm pleased to hear that there's thinking now going into consideration the needs of people, and particularly, for example, quiet sessions. And it's disappointing that, I asked 2 years ago at scrutiny on behalf of a disabled resident about this, and the action was declined. So that will be welcome. Councillor Vizard, I feel that you have represented the views of other councillors. The reality is that the Labour majority is here, and that I respect that. Your decision was presented and made at council, and it was clear that your position was set on closure. And I really welcome the efforts and the discussion from colleagues on a cross-party basis to actually try and come up with creative and positive solutions in the interest of the community. And I think that's something we can all agree on. The scrutiny recommendations are practical and viable. I'm quite intrigued about your perception of the VAT recommendation being a fast and loose recommendation, and then you go and say it will be explored. I voted down.
Quote me correctly. Please quote me correctly if you're going to post anything or quote it. I said, I'm not going to play fast and loose with council's money. This will go to full council. It's an earmarked reserve. I cannot say we'll spend it on this, that, and the other until we get all the information. Please report me correctly.
Great, thank you. I'm very glad that you clarified that.
This sounds like a complaint at the moment.
No, because what I'm saying is this is a thoughtful and creative solution based upon research that I hope will help the situation, and it was voted on cross-party, and it's something that we looked at in terms of actually providing some access to some funding that the council can use towards the leisure services. It is very clear that this is a valued community asset with a role in the leisure portfolio, and the reality is that it has been neglected and run down. It is clear that nobody wants to keep it that way. The campaigners aren't campaigning to keep it as it is. They have said loud and clear they want to work with the council to improve that. So we have a really important job going forward. The community feels the council is washing its hands of the pool and the users' needs, and I really, really hope that this next process, working with the community, will secure a positive future for the pool. It may involve the council having to provide some funding, and I'd also like to know the arrangements for reporting back the outcome of this process.
Thank you. A number of issues there about lessons. We're always up for taking the lessons. Okay, you say you're amazed at a number of the things. Well, okay. With regard to the 586,000, that's other discussions that we're having. That's not all as a result of this, and that will be dealt with in the normal way. The VAT, quite clear what it asked us to do, to investigate and see how a proportion might be invested. You heard the finance director last night make it perfectly clear he was not a VAT expert and everything else like that. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to be. That's what I mean about being fast and loose. I need to have the proper advice. This council needs to have the proper advice. It's an earmarked reserve. That's a matter for council to decide where the earmarked reserve is spent or otherwise. And we will do that in the budget setting environment, and we'll do it in that way. The other things that you raised, well, I hear what you say, but I'm not sure if I'm going to ask the members, because many of you have made a contribution and you've stated your position, I suppose I'm going to ask you, before you vote, to consider the points that have just been raised by the opposition leaders. And if you feel you need to change your mind with anything in any of that, please feel free to do so in relation to any of that. So once again, I think we just need to refresh, because we've been down a couple of rabbit holes. Good meeting up to a point, good contributions, quite fatalistic. Nobody likes what's going on. We feel what we have to do, the recommendations. But whatever people say, and I know they will say done deal or whatever done deal, the reality of it is we were asked by scrutiny. Scrutiny did not say, and here is the money, whatever that money is, go and keep it open. They didn't say that. Nor did they offer up, go and cut this and change that to keep it open. No, they didn't. They were quite clear as far as and we sat up there for 4 hours listening to it. And I thought it was a good meeting, well chaired by the chair, to be quite honest. No whip was imposed on any member of any party. And we listened, and they came up with a position. And even of the 2 or 3 proposals about the community transfer asset was all basically round about the same. The principle was, can we find a way in working with the community and the trust to keep it going, and whatever that may look like. And what we're saying tonight is that's exactly what we want to work to. The officers know that is the desire of myself and the executive. It is not a ploy just to talk it out at time. I will be meeting with the directors, asking where we are with it, what's happening. There is still work to do, and that's important. The VAT thing, in my view, I took the view that it wasn't necessarily a matter for the customer focus or indeed this executive to decide how to spend the VAT money. I think it was well intentioned. What it meant was you were saying to us, this is how I read it, you were saying to us, you're always on about money. You're always telling us where is it coming from. Here I am. I'm finding something for you. Well, if there is a cost to it, it will come back to council, to the executive and to council to make the decision if there is any additional cost. Because there is no budget as such for it. And that is what we do, and that's what will happen. And the report will come back at the appropriate time. So I think I've said enough now. And I'm going to move to a vote. This isn't quite the end. It's the end of the beginning of the end. And I'm going to move the recommendation. I'm going to ask for a seconder and get it right this time. A seconder for the recommendation.
Sorry, for the amendment.
Yeah, sorry, as amended. As amended. Is it up there as amended? Oh, sorry, I thought you were. Okay. Place, what is it? In consultation with the leader. So I'm asking that's in consultation with the leader. Oh yeah, there's still more to come yet, guys. Still more fun to come. That's reported back to the executive, and I think we add a further one, which says, along what I said, is that I think it's important to say, following scrutiny's recommendation, we require officers to, yes, yeah.
So what we have is this council is committed to assisting in the facilitation of this. That was the additional recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah. Facilitation
of this.
Facilitation of a potential community asset transfer, working with the community and the Northbrook Trust.
Yes. Yeah.
discuss the possibility of community
So
ownership.
let me have a try, Chair, and make sure this is what you're trying to put forward. So following the recommendation from scrutiny community, that officers explore with the Northbrook Trust and facilitate a conversation around community ownership with the Northbrook Trust and any interested
And
parties.
stakeholders, yeah.
Interested parties.
Interested parties, yeah.
Including community groups.
Interested parties. I mean, get off the thesaurus out, and we can get the thesaurus on more. No, because we don't know whether that can happen or not. That's what's going to happen. It's not their gift. They've got to bring it forward. And we will facilitate it. We will facilitate it.
Okay.
I don't think we have to type it.
You don't want me to, that's fine. Okay, yeah, no problem.
It's on recorded, isn't it?
It is. That's
So-
absolutely fine.
I'm going to move the recommendations as amended by myself. The two recommendations, the two amendments, one about working with the local people on all of that, and also the consultation with myself. So I'm going to move it. Can I have a seconder, please? Oh. So I'm going to move it from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'm sorry, David, can I just wait until it's up on the board? We don't usually put the amendment up on the board. You don't normally do that, I'm sorry, could you
If
just
you want
say
to have
it
a
again?
clarity on the wording, then can I suggest that we just adjourn for 2 minutes, Chair? and
Okay, we'll adjourn for
clarify
2
the
minutes, take a comfort break. So I was going to ask for that in any event because we've got the next item there. So it may seem a bit chaotic, but I think it demonstrated that this wasn't, set out or predetermined or whatever. So we've got the recommendation in there that it's in consultation with the Director of Police and myself. And the last one is recommended by scrutiny, which is what scrutiny asked us to consider. The executive asked officers to facilitate a discussion with the Northbrook Trust and interested parties, including community groups, on the possibility of community ownership. That's it. Councillor Wright.
I second that.
Right.
Sorry. Oh,
Good, I was just about to move it.
I was preempting, sorry.
You can move it and I'll second it. No, I'll move it from the chair in accordance with the Constitution. And I've got a seconder, Councillor Wright. So those are the recommendations on the board as amended. All those members of the executive in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. It's been a long journey, and thank you for those members of the public who stayed on and listened. I really do appreciate it. We now move on to the next item, which is parking tariffs 2025. There are a number of recommendations here to increase the car park charges as detailed in 8.2, to pass the transaction charge for using the Ringo app to the user, and to move the following car parks from Zone 1 to the Central Stone, that's Howell Road and the Triangle, and D, £75,000 of the income achieved from car parks to be set aside for maintenance, improvements and carbon reduction measures, and to delegate the authority to consider the consultation with myself and the Director of Corporate Resources. So what we're effectively asking here is, the paper's there to go out to consultation. Dave.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is the proposal to start a consultation on amendments to the parking places order. You have accurately read out the three proposals that we're seeking to consult on. Consultation will take place in line with the statutory requirements that we have to follow. And if that is for a shorter period, then we will comply with the consultation charter as well. So the maximum of either of those to ensure we meet our obligations. In terms of, I need to make this clear, I'm asking you for the £75,000 of income. However, you do not have the ability to award that. It can only be council. So what I'm suggesting, if you approve these recommendations, is we will then incorporate it. If the charges go ahead, we will incorporate it in future budget monitoring report to add that budget and seek council approval, as we do with all financial transactions. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dave. So questions and contributions from any of the executive members? This consultation process, it will come back. Does it come back to executive, Dave, or does it just come back to me and me?
No, we're seeking delegated authority to consider the responses. Unless there's something significant, it does not need to come back.
Right, but obviously we'll look at all what the consultations, and that's been proven in recent years when what went out was changed by ourselves when we listened to the members of the public. Councillor Wood.
Thank you. Looking at the 75,000 that are being requested, in the report it also talks about reducing antisocial behaviour, which I think is a thing to isn't often an issue with multi-storey car parks, etc. So I'm pleased to see that in addition to carbon reduction. Can you give me some idea what sort of carbon reduction measures we're thinking of?
Okay, we'll take that at the end, Dave, and we just get a couple more. Anybody else? No? Okay. Sorry, Councillor Pole.
I'm just trying to understand, A, the wording of it, increased car parking charges at all car parks by around us.
I think that's
Detail.
I think that's a bit of a typo, but the charges are all detailed in 8.2. And they all vary because of, they don't all fit.
It doesn't materially change it then.
No. It's
No.
all in 8. It's a typo. All in 8.2 is all the charges.
And could I just ask, is the £75,000 of the income achieved, is that £75,000 of the additional income achieved?
No, I think Dave will answer that one in a moment. I think I know the answer, but Dave will answer it. Is there any? All right.
Sorry, it's just a recognition of, getting a bit of echo, just a recognition of what was said last night to show I was listening. There's consultation, car parking consultation is listened to, the leader considers it, and there was an example given at scrutiny last night that the leader not only listened but made changes as a result of this consultation. Just thought it was worth popping that out there.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yes. Okay. So there's a couple of questions there. Is there anybody else wants to say anything? Dave, can you answer those questions too? Oh, sorry, Councillor Wright.
Sorry, it's just sort of on the point that Councillor Wood just made, but if this is to approve this going out to consultation, how can we also approve £75,000 as a result of these before we've actually been to consultation and heard what people say?
Well, I suppose my view on that is they may say we don't like it and therefore we won't answer it. But anyway, yeah, come on, Dave.
So let's just go through the three together. I'll have to come back with some detailed examples of the carbon reduction measures. The team have got some ideas, but I'll make sure that goes to all councillors. So you're aware of those. 75k is of the additional income to try and support the car parks and improve. And we've got a new head of service who has a number of ideas and is already actively exploring options to hopefully reduce antisocial behaviour. And in terms of the 75,000, I'm asking for you to agree that we can include that in a recommendation to council if it goes ahead only.
Okay. Well, if the consultation goes ahead.
No, if the proposals are adopted post consultation.
I understand.
So members might recall last year's parking tariffs report, which is what was alluded to last night at scrutiny. There was a proposal to increase the parking charges, and there was also this proposal to set aside 75,000 for maintenance. Because the car park charges did not go ahead last year, neither did the £75,000 budget for the additional maintenance. So we're putting it back in, but it's entirely dependent on the results of the consultation again.
Okay. Oh, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, it's just with the reduced rates for Sunday. I assume we'll be tracking that carefully to see if it does result in having higher footfall in the city centre, because I believe that's why we're doing it, to encourage and support businesses.
Hang on, Dave, just to see, is there anybody else with another question for Dave? Thank you, Dave.
So yes, so it's been very early days of implementation of the reduced charges for Sundays, but yeah, absolutely, we track all those. You can see an indication of the tickets for this year. It's the first year it's been implemented, but we'll be able to monitor that.
Okay, thank you. So, leaders of the opposition, do anybody want to speak? So I'll start at the other end this time. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. Sort of following on from what Councillor Wood has said, really. because the report says there's going to be various carbon emission measures, but I would just like to understand the policy that you're looking to pursue in terms of the role of car parking charges. Is it about maximising income? Some car parking charges are going down, which will generate more traffic. So what is the policy in relation to it? Because it says in the recommendation, the reasons for the recommendation that it's contributing towards a net zero carbon city. So how do you see car parking charges contributing towards reducing carbon emissions in the city?
There's some detail we'll ask in it. Thank you. We'll come on to those in a moment. But yeah, they're okay questions. Councillor Holland.
My approval.
Thank you.
Good evening, Leader. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, colleagues. Without wishing to sound like a broken record, you will have probably heard many of the things I'm going to say very briefly about car parking charges. I've worked quite closely with the small and medium-sized enterprises in the city. Some of the high street stores are perhaps shrinking away and they're falling away from our city. If we continue to increase car parking charges, sooner or later, more people will perhaps shop from home, more people will then go to other places where they don't have to pay. There are some good things in here, and I'll take one, is the cost of Ringo being passed on to the user. This happens in our neighbouring authorities, and I don't have a problem if I go to Sidmouth or Exeter or wherever, that East Devon District Council will not have to take it out of the funds to them. I do realise that car parking charges are probably the largest, is this true, the largest income stream we have. It's probably as large as our council tax, is it? Would that be true to say? So I do recognise how important it is, but here is a plea for the traders and the people who might think that they'd like to come and shop in our city. I wouldn't wish any increase to deter that footfall into the city centre. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't think any other leaders indicated to speak. I'll deal with the last one first. I mean, Peter, I don't know, perhaps you failed or just forgot that a year or so ago we didn't put the car parking charges up at all in order to assist. This was after COVID, so you might have wanted to acknowledge the fact that we didn't put it up and the fact that we are behind some. Indeed, it is a revenue stream, and indeed it is. Dave will come in on some of the other thing about the policy going forward. I'm going to talk to the directors and the chief executive about that. If we need a car parking strategy, I think there's most probably one somewhere, whether that needs a look at or whatever. But I just look at when you say about carbon and everything else and what this contributing, and when you look at 2017, there was 2,581,781 car parking tickets, and this year there's only 1,900,000. So there is a reduction, is what I'm saying. There is a reduction, and of course this is where we have that twin sort of argument between, yes, keep all the cars out. Not everybody can afford electric cars. Keep them all out, but what do we do in the meantime? We want to encourage people in. So it is a difficult balance, Peter and Diana. So Dave, can you answer Councillor Moore's okay questions?
Thank you, Chair. I thought the only question was in relation to the policy on net zero, which I think you've answered. I mean, it serves a lot of purposes, car parks. So part of it is responsibility to keep traffic moving in the city, supporting the highway network, trying to get the right balance for a significant throughput, trying to act as a deterrent so that people may consider alternative forms of transport. So it serves a lot of purposes, including being our single biggest income stream at the council. So yeah, it serves all those purposes, and the balance is trying to get it right to support all of those, including the local economy.
If I can just add, I think we're a bit cheaper than the county council with their on-street parking. when they don't have to maintain anything because they maintain their roads out of my road tax. So I don't know, they're doing quite well, the county council, but we're a bit cheaper than them, aren't we?
It's an excellent question. I have never used Devon County Council's on-street parking.
So that's proving I can ask an okay question. Right, okay, so we've got the recommendations. We're going out to consultation. Councillor Wright.
I'm very sorry to continue in being a pedant tonight.
You're not, just make your point.
Thank you. I'll make the point. So, in recommendation 2.1A, doesn't make sense.
Yes. That's the typo we spoke about earlier.
Oh, I missed that. Sorry. So what's happening to that? Is it coming out? The by round is coming out.
By round is my, yeah, so by round is road.
Apologies for missing that
Sounds
conversation.
in 8.2 because
Was that it?
Yes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
We'll make sure that's corrected. So, so we're going out to consultation. I'll move it from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second.
All those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you very much. Thank you for attending. The next meeting is the 8th of July. Can't wait.